So, welcome back to Tab U. My name's Kartina, and today I'm joined by Sam, Andrew, and Jordan. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves, Sam?
You've done it for me. Sam Morris, lending associate at Tab.
Andrew Binstock, auctioneer at Auction House London.
I'm Jordan Phillips, associate director at Auction House London.
Today, our special guests are obviously from Auction House London, and we are going to be talking to you about property auctions and everything that comes with it. If we kick things off with question number one, quite simply, what is an auction house?
What is an auction house? It's a place where people go to buy properties that are being sold at auction. What a weird one to start with. What is an auction house? That is an auction. There's two ways of selling property in the UK. One is through estate agents and private treaty. The other is through auctioneers. Completely different models, but ultimately the end result is the same. A buyer walks away with a house or flat.
And I guess, so you said there's two options. Estate agent, we understand that. How does the property auction work?
So the property auction side of it is very fast. It's basically a concept whereby you market very quickly. Typically, we will launch a catalogue with 180 odd lots. You have 2.5 weeks to show those to as many people as want them. Buyers get the opportunity to register their interest, download legal packs, view them, do whatever, ask any questions, and then they all have to turn up, typically in the old days, into an actual auction room, or nowadays they just literally log in online. They watch me screaming and shouting numbers at them for a few hours, and they literally, metaphorically, put their hand in the air and either win it or don't. The whole thing's super quick, and if they do win it, they have to put their money down there, and then 4 weeks later they get the property. It's that fast. It can take 5 weeks tops between very first hearing about the building and already having the keys in your hand.
And you said you can get up to 180 lots. Are they all auctioned off at the same session?
All on the same day.
All on the same day. You've got, one every 2 weeks?
No, we do 9. We're doing 9 this year, so it's roughly every 5 to 6 weeks at the moment.
Have you ever had more than 180?
Yes, we had 215, I think, in December last year.
Yeah, so this guy is the guy that basically brings in the majority of all the lots. And depending on how well we're doing in any given part of a year, we could have, like he says, up to 200 plus.
Wow.
I think we might have 200 plus in this auction
yeah, I
coming.
think
We've already
possible.
got about 120. We've got another week to go. And
how do you go about sourcing kind of, do people come to you saying, look, I've got property on auction, or is there an element of you going out and sourcing on the market?
That's a great question. Where does all the stock come from? Typically, it comes from a variety of sources. You have what we would call our regulars. So as the company has grown over the last sort of 12 years or so our regular database of sellers who come back and over has grown. And again, Jordan here looks after a lot of our serious big hitter clients. And then we get loads of people who just probably go online, run a search for how do I sell my house at an auction. And luckily, as the algorithms have pushed us higher and higher and higher up the rankings, so our name pops up, and people will then call us in and go, what's my house worth? And then the journey starts from there. But like with any business, how good you are depends on how many other people want to use you.
Yeah.
So we've had to make sure we're pretty damn good at what we do so that other people start wanting to get in on that action.
And the types of property you sell on auction, can it be?
anything with a legal title, we can sell it.
Great. What's the most obscure one you've had?
That's a good question.
Well, they range, don't they? So basically, you can have a £1,000 little garage in the middle of Timbuktu, all the way up to a £4.5 million probate that we sold in St John's Wood, and anything in between. In terms of obscurity, we've probably sold things like public toilets and God knows what. But
We've sold a few boats as well.
boats,
Yeah.
Wow.
houseboats, obviously,
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
the sort of thing
No.
Abramovich would have. But
No, I've sold an actual boat in St.
Have you sold a real boat?
Catherine's Dock, about
Wow.
6-7 months ago.
yeah, boats, bits of people's back gardens, garages, and random little outbuildings.
Yeah.
I think we once sold just a swimming pool as well.
Yeah, we've sold all sorts.
What about
It's anything.
a sort of beachside beach hut? Any of those?
We've had beach huts before. You also get beach huts that have been converted into like small 1-bed houses. Down in Margate, we had one that was it was going for like 300 grand. They wanted for it.
Not bad. Well, they do go quite a lot, don't they?
Yeah.
What I saw on Instagram, someone converted a bus into a mobile home. Could I sell that?
I don't
don't know.
Unless it was, we would sell the land that it's on, but we wouldn't really sell the bus because
It's a bus.
it's a bus. You take it
Basically,
to a
it's a
car
bus.
auction.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fine.
But,
So ultimately, anything with a legal title,
Exactly.
Yeah.
that defines what can be sold via your auctions.
100%.
Yeah.
And what
Got
you're
it.
seeing a lot of is people trying to cash in on little bits of things they didn't realise had any value. So typically you will see bits of back garden is a classic one, or a plot of land to the side of your own house that is demised to you. You own it, but you didn't realise it had any value because it's just a bit of grass there. And we're starting to see a lot of that coming in now. So people are, listen, this is an island where there's only a finite amount of areas, and people are getting wise to the fact that there is value in outbuildings, garages that has nothing but storage and this sort of thing.
Sure.
So
We're
people are
also
cashing in.
getting roadways at the moment. So people are selling roads,
Yeah.
like private roads. Like someone
Yeah.
owns that, and there'll just be all these different roads, and there'll be small grass verges on the side of the roads, and
I mean,
people are buying them.
enough,
There's
fair
loads
enough.
of demand for them.
Well, I'll tell you why. It's because these fall under the demise of ransom strips. So there is value in trying to create a sense of fear amongst the other locals about what you might do with that area. So if you, for example, as he says, if you've got a roadway, which is nothing but an access in and out of a private development, say, intrinsically has there's nothing you could do with it other than make veiled threats to the houses that live around there that I might put a gate up there and charge you all 10 quid to drive your cars in, say. And then what would those people then pay you to not do that? And that's ransom strips. So we've seen tons of that kind of stuff come into the market.
is there anything, before we kind of move on to the next main question, is there anything you would, even if it's got a title, you could sort of say, actually, that's not going to suit us or our
Yeah, all
clients?
the we're turning down stock all the time. We're probably valuing about 1,000 properties an auction
Yeah.
cycle, and we're taking on like 150, 200. So most of the time, people want too much money for their property, and it just doesn't suit the auction model. And if we were to take everything on, we'd be selling like 15, 20% of our catalogue, and we'd just be wasting a load of time doing viewings and whatnot. So a lot of it is just telling people your property's not going to sell for that. It's got to be reserved at X. We need it at that level, and they're going, oh no, I would never sell for that. So yeah, we're turning down stock all the time, really.
Just so we understand exactly how are you pricing things. You mentioned the reserve price. What exactly is the reserve price?
The reserve price is the minimum that the property can be sold for on the day of the auction. So you have a guide price and a reserve price. We don't disclose the reserve price to the public, and the guide price has to be within 10% of the reserve price. So
Kind of indicates the region within which
exactly,
you expect it to sell.
Exactly, yeah. So if let's say you had a reserve price of 300,000,
That's
you'd
not sorry to interrupt. That's not true. The reserve is not an auctioneer's indication of where a property might sell.
Okay.
We hope it sells for miles over. It's an indication of where the seller would be prepared to sell
yeah.
if just one person turns up.
Understood.
So that's a big difference, and this is a completely misunderstood element, and people do get frustrated.
Yeah.
They say, okay, the guide was 100, therefore we assume the reserve was no more than 110, all factually correct, but yet it sold for 250. Why is that? Well, because that's where demand took it.
Yeah.
We are not sitting here telling people the reserve is where it's going to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People get very upset when their time is wasted, quite understandably so, and this is a huge misconception, which I'm glad came up early in this,
But,
in case no one listens past this point. Do not assume
you
guides and
underestimate
reserves.
my listeners.
So the guide price obviously will be X amount plus, which is a clear indicator that it's probably going to be that price or more.
Basically, if you see a guide price of £100,000, what we are telling you is the reserve is likely to be somewhere in the region of 100,000 to 110. If you're the only human that turns up with any interest in this building whatsoever, that's the range you need to be in. If your budget's 80, forget it's not for you. If this is very popular, which you might not know, it should go for miles more. Don't be upset if it goes for miles more, and don't have a go at us because we're really good at our job and it goes for miles more.
I guess this kind of leads us nicely into the next question of question number 2. How can I buy a property at auction? And I've got a whole range of questions around me being the buyer, and then I'll go further down the line into selling. So yeah, how can I buy a property at auction?
So you'd start by looking at our catalogue. So when we launch the catalogues, next Friday is when we launch for the August 3rd auction. You'd find a property that you like. And on our website, you'll find the legal pack for the property, which has got all the normal documents that go between solicitors during a normal estate agency sale. It's all put into one pack to be downloaded by the borrower from our website, because it's an immediate exchange of contracts on the day. You need to make sure you've done all your due diligence beforehand. Then there's also viewing times as well online. You can go have a look at the property. A lot of people like to get solicitors to have a look through the legal pack, so that's advisable to do that just in case you miss something in there. So yeah, you'd go view it. You would read through the legal pack, do all your research into it, and then you'd register to bid for the auction, and then start bidding on the day and hope you get it.
As so you said I need to register to bid for an auction. Do I need to have anything? Like, do you go through any checks of that person who's registered, given the speed of it?
Yeah, so we take all basic information from you, so like all your address, contact details. You need to upload your ID, 2 forms of ID, so we know who you are. And then there's also like a payment bidder security, so you have to put in your card details where we hold a small amount of money, just in case if you try run away after the auction.
You asked earlier, how can you buy a property at an auction? So for your listeners who are just getting into this, you don't have to wait till the auction. If you are somebody who really likes the look of a house, just offer now. There is in a lot of cases, there is an ability to buy it now. We call it sold prior, but for those that have never done it before, that's a kind of a more eBay-esque version of what it is. And the reality is some vendors will go, great, I don't need to wait 3 weeks. Let's do this deal right now, right here. Put your 10% down and we'll exchange today. Or they'll say, no, I want to run it to the room, let the guys do their thing, and I'll take my chances on the day. So you don't have to always wait, but some vendors will force you to wait.
Sure. And is it true I can get a house on auction cheaper than normal market?
Yeah, you can, but it's about finding the right. You need to bid on a lot of houses and a lot of properties to be able to get a good deal. Some go for more than market value, some go for less, some sell at market value. It varies. So you need to look at a lot of properties, know what you're doing, and yes, the truth, you will find a deal. There is, I'd say, at every auction there is a few deals in there that people pick up that they could sell for a lot more the next day, but. It depends. Most stuff goes for good money on the day of the auction.
Yeah, ultimately, as Jordan alludes to, there's no one fit. There's no one rule for everything. Mm-hmm. If you're lucky, so Sam came and wanted this, lot 20, and he was the only person that could be bothered to turn up that day, or for whatever reason, the only person that wasn't on holiday that day or whatever, he's going to get it at the absolute lowest price possible. On a completely separate day, that might be competitively amongst 10 people, and he's got to pay through the roof, and it's just complete. There's so many moving parts. There is no real kind of fixed answer to that.
But ultimately, it does sound like the sellers will get what they want for it or more, and the buyers know that they're buying it for a price that they're absolutely happy with, and they could get it for less.
Listen, human behaviour is like this. I do a lot of charity auctions, and okay, everyone's drunk at those, so the rules bend slightly. But if I'm selling a signed cricket bat, for example, and there's a load of cricket fans in the audience and they're 17 champagnes down, that is going for big money, because people just get carried away, they get overexcited, and the whole moment they get caught up in it. It's not totally dissimilar in a property auction, even though that's done, presumably by sober buyers.
That once was a drunk lady.
Yeah, exactly. Knows what they're doing at 12 o'clock. Yeah, exactly.
She bought about 4.
But ultimately, if you've taken a day off work, you've got yourself set up, you're all there, you're buzzing for this house. In your brain, this is your house. Now, your budget might be 400, say. But there's Andrew screaming and shouting at you. It's 380. Now it's 390. You're going, oh, I'm still getting it a bit. Now it's 400. Do I keep going? Go on, I'll have another go. Before you know it, it's 42. It's 44. It's 46. It's 4. Next thing you know, you bought it for 430, and you're like, oh, what have I done? Well, that's how it works sometimes. So you can't do that in an estate agency world. In auction world, that happens all the time. So sometimes you might get it at 390, and whoopity-doo, I've got this for 10 grand less than I was prepared to pay. On another day, you paid 30,000 more than you were mentally set to go to, because you just got caught up in the whole emotion of it all. Yeah. That's auctions.
And I guess kind of leads on to the next question, the risks involved with an auction, me buying property on auction. Obviously, you can go above. Are there anything else people need to be aware of?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, make sure you read through the legal pack is number one, because the seller can charge fees to the buyer, so they can ask for their auctioneer's fees, their solicitor's fees, to be reimbursed to them on completion. So if you don't read through it, you might buy a house for 400 grand, and then on completion you get a completion statement with an extra 2% charge on top of that. And if you haven't read through the documents, then
it can be
you know exactly.
Yeah. So like anything, there's going to be risks. But
there's it's just all about doing the research beforehand. You know, having a look at the property. Some people want to bring a surveyor down to the property to check whether it's got subsidence or anything like that. So that we you know, a lot of people do it, and we'd probably advise to do it just to be careful. But
you could do as much checking as you want.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no rule. We don't forbid you from doing all your checks. A prudent buyer might decide, actually, I don't want to spend loads of money and then not win the house in the first place. But an equally prudent buyer might say, I'm not going to even risk the concept of spending £500,000 of my money and not know exactly what I'm getting.
Yeah.
There is nothing is forbidden. There is no kind of the old days of caveat emptor are long gone. Buyer beware used to be the rule of thumb for an auction. That's all finished. So now it's full disclosure. The vendor is not allowed to hide anything. He just touched on subsidence as a great example. If you know your house has subsidence, you must tell everyone. You can't just go, oh, I'm just hidden it with boxes and hope no one sees that it's lopsided like that. It doesn't work. So things like Japanese knotweed, anything that's bad must be disclosed. So buyers can take comfort in that. However, the amount of buyers we see that are just so flippant with how they spend £500,000 of their own money is just incredible. You know, if you wouldn't go to a sandwich shop and not read it and go, well, what am I actually going to eat here for my lunch? Yet people turn up to our auctions and just stick hands in the air, whether it's
crazy.
and they've not done 1 minute of looking at anything, and they're committing to
It's
£500,000
like they're
quid.
buying sandwiches.
Yeah,
like
it's unbelievable.
but they're spending millions of pounds. It's actually crazy.
It is incredible.
They
isn't
won't
it?
read through legal packs. A lot of the winners every auction, you'll have people who have registered to bid on, say, 30, 40 properties, and then we like to look beforehand, like who's downloaded what legal pack, so we can gauge what's selling. And you'll get someone who's registered for 30, 40 lots and they haven't downloaded any legal packs, and we'll go, I wouldn't ignore this guy, he's not going to buy anything. And then he bids on every single one of those properties and he'll win like 4 or 5 of them. He spent like £2 million and he hasn't read through one document. And then
you're still talking about probably professionals who are really expert.
I know, but a lot of them.
But how many people do we see genuinely? I mean, look, we sell 150 of the 170 odd that we end up offering. It's only 3 or 4, but it's still 3 or 4. Will get on. I had no idea that ... How did you have no idea that ... How did you not know that on completion this was going to be expected of you? Oh, I never read. We have a bidder declaration. Okay, so I don't know what my competitors do, but we were so concerned about buyers going through the process and not reading stuff that they should read. We invented a tick box that doesn't even let you get past the bidder registration page without ticking a 1-paragraph declaration that I wrote myself that basically says, I have read and understood the special conditions of sale, and I am aware of any additional fees that might be inside of that. So even if I've read nothing else, even if I've done no other homework whatsoever, I am aware, because thank you, Auction House London, for teaching me, that there is one place all these nasty surprises might be, and we've even signposted it and told you to go and read it. So they tick it, they've read it. Now, if you've never done this before, and someone said, go and read this before you go one step further, you're going to go and read it, aren't you? Surely. If you back to your sandwich example, if someone says, there might be poison in here, just go and just check on the back, because we detail the ones that have poison. You're reading it, aren't you? You're checking whether there's poison in there.
It's a good example.
We are doing a poison check signpost, and people are going, no, I don't care if there's poison in there, I'm just going to crack on anyway and eat
So
it.
you guys, as the auctioneers, you're taking some of the responsibility and making sure that the information is there for your bidders as well. Can you sell the property without certain information?
Right, so just be clear, we don't check legal packs, we can't. There's 180 of them and we're not lawyers. So we do not sit here and profess to our buyers, we've checked this is all good, there's no poison in this sandwich. We don't do that because we don't know. What we're saying is, we're telling you now, do not take one more step on this journey until you have checked that this is all good to go. And we're signposting the only place where it could be that there's only one spot, you know from your experience, there's only one spot that this could all come about, and it's in this what's called the special conditions. So that's what we're doing, we're signposting, but we can't possibly sit here and go, we know everything because we're so clever. We don't. What was your question? Sorry.
The question was, is there a certain amount of minimum information that you guys need for a lot to be eligible to go to auction?
Yeah.
But you talk a lot about legal packs. Can you sell a property without the legal pack?
No.
No, you have to have like the office copy entries, so like the title.
Those are the titles,
plan,
right?
Yeah, and then you don't
No,
need
you can have
special.
nothing else if you want.
You can have nothing else to be honest.
Common auction conditions.
Well, usually like
Fine.
an EPC, you'd probably need, but
For certain properties, if it's habitable, an EPC, and as he said, the office copy entries, which for people who don't know what that means, is the title documents, the title deeds,
Sure.
the thing that says Sam Morris owns this building and he is legally allowed to sell it to the next person in the chain.
Sure.
If you are completely crazy, you would buy with just that document. You'd be nuts to do so, but you were legally entitled to. The seller could sell with that,
Sure.
the buyer could buy with that, and then this is an important part of it. The common auction conditions covers everything. So this is a really boring 4-page document that sits at the back at literally every single property sale. It's in the catalogue. It's like the small print, you know. It's like the kind of the tiny words that just says, in the absence of anything else, this is how this sale is governed.
Yep.
Buyers, this is what's going to happen to you. Sellers, this is what's going to happen to you. And auctioneers is what you have to do.
Sure. So I know in order to sell certain properties, you need to serve the correct notices, and I understand with auctions there might be certain notices required for certain types of properties. If those notices aren't served in the correct way, is the property then not eligible to be sold? What happens if you list a property that later on isn't eligible to be sold? You find that out later down the line and you can't sell it for that reason.
So that will usually be for like a freehold ground rent. If
Fine.
it's Section 5 notices that you need to serve prior to selling them to the leaseholders. Usually, when we take on the property, we always ask the seller, we say, have you served your Section 5 notices?
Sure.
And most of the time they'll say yes, but then sometimes you get people who say yes, but haven't done it correctly.
Fine.
You'll always find that out prior to the auction, because the solicitor for the seller, when they're preparing the legal pack, they'll either send you an email like a week before the auction and go, oh, I've just realised we haven't served the correct notices. We have to postpone it until like the next auction or a few months down the line. So, yeah, as long as they've been served correctly, then it can go into auction. But it will always come up beforehand, because interested parties won't buy it without seeing the Section 5 notices being served. And the seller's solicitor will usually tell you prior to the auction that it hasn't been done correctly, we cannot sell it.
So just quickly before we move on to the kind of selling the portion of the property, for a buyer, how quickly do they need funds? How does it work? Obviously, we've registered, you've kind of checked that we are who we are. What happens with kind of AML and stuff like that? What point does that come under?
Straight after the
process?
auction, you have to pay a 10% deposit. We tend to give, since we've gone online, we give people up to 48 hours to pay the 10% deposit, but really it's expected like immediately, because when we were in the auction room, you know, you'd win a lot and then you come to the back of the room and pay your deposit there. So, you know, most people pay it the day after the auction or the day of the auction. And we do all the AML checks, so we have to take all of their IDs, proof of address and everything, and check that, you know, they're not a money launderer or they're not a politically exposed person or stuff like that. And then they usually have 28 days to complete the sale. But that varies. Again, that will be in the special conditions in the legal pack. It may say the buyer's only got 10 days to complete. Or it
Sometimes
might say
8 weeks.
Sometimes 8 weeks, exactly. So it varies. So it's usually 28 days. And if it doesn't say anything in there, it's 28 days, because that's covered in the common auction conditions.
And I guess with the mortgage, is it that someone tries to get one in 28 days? Can they sort of go in being like, if this is a property that I want to win, can you sort of prearrange it? Or
You can do it. Or it's a bit risky if you don't have the means to complete. Just in case if the mortgage company turns you down 2 days before completion, you will lose your 10% deposit.
Yeah.
That's when you talk to us.
Exactly. I was about to say, we've seen an enormous rise in the amount of people that are now going to bridging companies, because they were ill-educated insofar as they didn't understand the processes of buying at auction. You must be liquid for 10% there and then on the spot. And then you have, as he says, 4 weeks to get the rest together. And be under no illusions. That's fixed in stone. You run the risk of dropping your 10% if you don't have that money. And I imagine, and Sam will answer this a lot better than me, I dread to think how many buyers 2 days before completion have a massive panic moment and say, oh my goodness, I had no idea how strict this time scale was. Can you quickly give me the remaining 90%? Jordan's absolutely right. A prudent buyer will have a plan A and a plan B.
Sure.
Plan A is all goes well. Plan B is what happens if they reject me? Now what?
Yeah.
Can I go to mum and dad, friends, whatever it might be, to just for as a temporary fix?
Yeah, sure. And so let's go, if we move on to question number 3, which is how can I sell my property through an auction house?
Well, when you say an auction house, you mean the
Auction house.
Sorry, how can I sell my property through Auction House London?
That's a really good question, Katrina.
Sorry.
What would you do? Well, first of all, you'd go to auctionhouselondon.co.uk, you'd fill in an online form or call us up, and a real quick, no obligation chit-chat with one of the sales team, which Jordan runs, and it's an informal conversation. What's my house worth? I think this. No, I want that. All right, buy. Or we're on the same sort of ballpark here. So there's no heavy duty stuff you've got to jump through. Once you're on the same page as Jordan or any of the sales guys, then we start to go through the process of, right, we need to photograph it. We come out, we chat about this, we chat about that. We need to write the thing up, and if it's not near to us, it's far away. We got to somehow get someone in there. But the initial conversation is very relaxed, and it's a completely no obligation starting point. And we implore anyone who's got any interest in finding out, is my house or flat or garden or garage or commercial building suitable for auction? Yes to 100% of all of those. The only thing that would stop it being an auction property is if your expectations are too high.
And how do you get a valuation for it as a property house to kind of make your decision on whether you think the seller's wildly incorrect?
We do like an auction appraisal. So you'll just look at comparables. Let's say you've got a block of flats and they're all 2 beds, and you go online and you can see all these 2 beds are selling for roughly 230 to 250, and someone says, I want 280 for my 2-bed flat. It's a non-starter already, because we need a discount from market value anyway. So we would usually be looking at a reserve around the 200, 210 mark, something around that sort of level. Ideally for us, the lower it is, the better. We prefer a low reserve price, so it attracts a lot of interest, gets a lot of people bidding. But yeah, it's an informal, have a quick look at comparables, and then we'll guide you. We'll say, this is what they're selling for, this is where you need to be. And then if someone's like saying, I need X and it's too high, we'll just be like, okay, come back to us if you lower your expectations.
Are there particular circumstances that people might be in that would be the reason they come to sell the property with you? Because obviously you're talking about the process being a lot quicker. So
Yeah.
if time is a factor for someone, obviously they can come to you for that reason.
Exactly.
What are some of the reasons that people will talk to you about selling their property?
So there's two types of vendors. There's the corporate sellers, who often, so the clients I look after, which is much smaller now, certainly less than what the amount Jordan's taking care of, they have to be seen to be selling in a public auction. Why? Because then there's no argument as to what the price was achieved was not a fair price. So when you're selling on behalf of beneficiaries, assets for banks, things like that, there has to be a process whereby the agent that's disposing of that property can put their hands in the air and go, there you go, I got you a fair price. So I look after quite a few of those people, and those always end up in a public auction room, and those are great because there's no emotional attachment. The seller is typically just somebody who's, looking after a case file for someone else. They are much more prone to believe in the auction model, i.e. if something's worth 300, if you market it at 250, you're going to end up with 310, 320 because of human behavior. What Jordan and some of the guys in the office are dealing more with is, and it's a much harder sell, as you can imagine, is trying to convince somebody who's been told by a high street estate agent your house is worth 350, even though it's only worth 300, and we're saying no, don't listen to them, it's only worth 250, so that we can try and get you the 300 if all things go well. That's a much harder sell, and this is what we spend a lot of our time doing. But the auction model is, again, we go back to cricket bats and drunk people. If enough people want the item you're selling, the price will naturally just grow and grow and grow until everyone else says, I can't, I'm done.
So if I flip that, what if no one's there for it? What if it doesn't sell?
So
what
it
if no
sells
one
on-
wants that property?
Well, okay, if one person turns up, they win it on reserve. That's the
course.
dream for the buyer.
Yeah.
And the nightmare for the seller. If there's no one there, then it just doesn't sell. If it doesn't reach reserve, the auctioneer will just simply disclose it as, sorry, we've not sold this. We haven't reached our reserve price.
That's if there's no bids.
No bids at all, yeah.
And in the event that someone does bid, but they don't manage to complete the sale on time, or they actually don't even pay the deposit to exchange contracts of the sale, what happens in these sort of scenarios?
So there's two situations. One is the purchaser has put down a 10% deposit, but for whatever reason, between that day and the 4 weeks later, doesn't complete.
Yeah.
They drop their deposit. Seller is typically quite happy with that situation, assuming there was other interest in the building. So if there was a competitive bidding war, it's gone for, say, 460. The person's dropped 46,000 because they've just decided for whatever reason, personal or whatever, they don't want to go through with it. Seller keeps 46,000, maybe less a few costs, and then gets to go again and sell it at 458 the next time round. Delighted. What a result for that seller.
Yeah.
When there's only one bidder and that scenario happens, then maybe the seller's not so happy. What's happening now in the COVID world, of course, is because we're not doing real auction live theatre productions, we are reliant, as Jordan alluded to a short while ago, we're reliant on the purchaser being nice and good and doing what they're told and wiring us a deposit within 48 hours of winning the property. What happens if they tell us to get lost? Nearly swore there. What happens if they tell us to get lost between the moment the gavel's down and the physical wiring of the money? Is a new concept that we're only having to deal with recently.
Yep.
And that, unfortunately, then boils down to a seller's commercial appetite for going after people. Can I be bothered to chase some person who probably hasn't got any money around the world for, my 10% deposit? Or do I just write it off as a bad experience, turn around to Jordan and say, find me another buyer?
Yep.
And I think you can argue this one. 98% of the time, they'll turn around to Jordan and the sales team and just say, I can't be bothered with this. That's very annoying.
Yep.
But go and sell it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Usually you'd call the underbidder, the next person down.
Yeah.
They'll usually won't be at the same price they'll try because they know they're not legally bound to pay that price.
Right.
They'll usually, offer 5-10 grand less than that, maybe a bit more. But that's usually the go-to thing to do, call the bidders below them.
Do these scenarios crop up often?
Yes, happened only the other day. Last auction, there was one of the lots, some guy bought it, emailed us the same day in the afternoon saying, I'm withdrawing from the sale. And it's so frustrating.
What was the one you had? Someone stole my laptop.
Oh my God, this
is
is the fun
amazing.
This we had two.
This is unbelievable.
Okay, story time.
Right. Someone wins it. Bear in mind, to buy a property at auction, you have to jump through at least 5 massive hoops. You have to fill in loads of bit of registration. You have to upload your ID, proof of address. You have to register. You have to download, read legal packs, do a load of stuff. You then have to log in on the day. You have to sit around all day, wait for it, push buttons. Somebody, for whatever reason, went through all that journey, and then at 1 minute after it being sold to them, went, don't want it anymore. God knows what mental capacity this person was in. But they then created this story. So what happens is the minute the auction's over and suddenly we call you up and go, right, great, well done, congratulations, you won it, give us your money. Yeah. And this person said, what is that like? Who are you? No. Someone stole my phone.
He goes,
ran off down the street, pushed all the buttons while they were stealing my phone.
He said, someone stole my phone last week, and I think they've registered to bid on my phone. And we go, but hang on, sir, they've uploaded your IDs, and they've put down the bidder security deposit. He goes, oh, they stole my wallet as well, so they must have uploaded the IDs. And then we looked, and he's downloaded the legal pack the week before. And we go, but what about downloading the legal pack? He goes, well, I think the thief must have downloaded the legal documents.
As me, using my email address that only I have access to.
So at least this thief is being careful just in case.
This thief was a very prudent buyer, let me tell you. A very prudent buyer indeed. So we get that. I mean,
we get the most ridiculous story. We have a lot of my kid was bidding on my laptop. That happens quite often.
Well, actually, we had that to a point where we ended up having a 2-click process.
Yeah.
Because we had my dog jumps up and clicks the button for me type rubbish. And then we go, okay,
52
fine.
times.
So now you have to go, are you sure? Yeah. So the baby's done it twice, apparently. So listen, we sell 150 lots. This happens on 5. So we're not talking about a lot. It's, it's not a lot. But it's funny when not funny, but it's interesting when it happens.
It's quite frustrating as well because, we've lost out on our fees. The seller's lost out on a sale.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's sometimes if it's a small plot of land, like, you get past it, but if you sold like a £2 million building and it's happened, you're
frustrating.
kicking yourself.
Presumably, when it was like, do you do any? I mean, I'll touch on this in a bit later, but is it all online now, or are you kind of transitioning back to real life? Because was that easier in real life to kind of, you can't leave the place without paying a deposit?
Well, you could even then, to be honest, Katrina. So in the old days, and we had this, this is the illusion, which I think is wrong, that right now the buyer has much more freedom just to run off into the wind. It's not really the truth, because in the old days, you would write a check. You could go home and bounce that check straight away. You could call you. I mean, this happened a lot. In fact, I think it's actually stricter now, because you have to swipe your debit card, which can be taken straight away.
Sure.
So ultimately, in the old days, yes, people were physically present, so there was a less likelihood that they were going to misbehave. But you could put your hand in the air and just literally sprint off into the car park. We weren't police. We weren't going to rugby tackle you and throw you to the floor.
I tried to a couple of times.
Yeah. I mean, and you had idiots who would sabotage an auction. You have unhappy tenants who would pretend to be bidders and win it and then run off, and you would have people who've been repossessed who didn't want to be repossessed.
Yeah.
So, it hasn't changed. If anything, it's probably a little bit tighter. But yes, there is no way, unfortunately, there's no auctioneer in the land that can stop a buyer intent on mischief, doing things that sabotage a sale. Unfortunately, it will happen once in a blue moon.
So if we kind of move on to question number 4, which obviously you've just told me you're not policemen, but what are your roles within the auction house process?
I'm the associate director, so my main role is valuing properties, bringing on properties, selling properties. So it's my job to make sure that there is business happening, basically, that we've got a big auction, we've got lots of properties going in there, and we're getting them all sold.
Can you get a feel, kind of, obviously you look at the people who download the packs, and can you obviously get a feel for the houses that are being more popular?
Yeah.
Do you track visits and
viewings? You've got loads
and
of data to go by prior to the auction. So something that's great these days, now that we're online, is we can see how many people have registered to bid for each individual property.
Yeah.
So if there's no registered bidders on a property, you can just withdraw it, just before the auction, and you're not going to end up offering it to no one on the day and it goes unsold. So that's a lot more helpful. You can see all the people who've downloaded the legal pack, so you can gauge, there's been 100 people who've downloaded that pack and there's only 5 people who've downloaded that pack. You know that the one that's got 100 people on it is going to fly. The other one might not.
Is that information you disclose to a seller, or do you kind of keep it back to kind of...
We give weekly marketing updates to our sellers, so we would send them like a list of how many people have viewed it, how many people have downloaded the legal pack, and then the registered bidders, it doesn't really come until about 5 days prior to the auction that we even open the bidder security. So you get people who are registering to bid, but they haven't put down their deposit yet, so you can't really take them seriously, because a lot of people are just browsing online and they go all at the time, I'm registered to bid on that, but then they never actually put down their deposit. And most people as well, they don't register to bid until the day before the auction. It's crazy.
Is it kind of like a mental thing where they're like, if I don't register, maybe I'll be more lucky to get it?
Maybe, I don't know.
Human behaviour is just people are lazy. So ultimately, if you've got a deadline of doing something by Friday lunchtime, you're going to do something on Friday lunchtime. Very rarely will somebody, A, want to show their hand too early, and secondly, we see it all the time. If we've got, we had 1,500 people registered to bid on our last auction, I'd say 500 of them did it the evening before morning of the auction. Within the last 12 hours or so.
We had about 800 registered bidders on the Monday before the auction. Yeah. And then the next, I'd say half of the people who registered to bid do it the day before the auction. Yeah. It's actually crazy. And we're always panicking on like the 2 days before the auction, thinking, oh no, it's going to be a bloodbath. No one's buying anything. And then you wake up on auction day and there's like thousands of bidders.
Yeah, it's amazing. And actually, to touch on something you said, which is really, really important, the information that's disclosed to vendors. In the olden days, the new method of the sort of live stream auctions, the vendor was often in the dark until the auction was physically in progress. Would we have any idea of who was going to bid on that lot? Because we now live in a world of pre-registration, that information obviously we never disclose names or numbers or emails or anything like that, anything that would jeopardise any GDPR. But we can say there's 8 people, there's 12 people, there's none. So vendors love this. They now know within reason how things are going to go for them. And that has been a real upside. Vendors do not want this to change. very few of our vendors are not enjoying the current method that we have to employ. And so for that reason, for vendors that have never done auctions before, this is a great time to get in because it's never been more vendor favourable.
And just going back to kind of what's your role within auction?
Well, I co-own the business. I founded the business with my partner, Jamie. I'm the auctioneer. I make sure the whole thing grows, turns, and keeps happening. And obviously, I make sure that we've got good people in the building, like Jordan, who's been with us pretty much from the start, who are how can I put it? We're driving the ship for us. You know, without Jordan, we would have half the catalogues we have. The company has grown to a level now where there are people doing very, very niche and specific roles.
Yeah.
We have people, a bit like your good self, whose only thing is very much marketing, making sure newsletters are going out on time and look good and all the rest of it. We have people whose sole existence is to support people like John, making sure all the admin side, because once upon a time we did everything. And now it's too much. Thank God the company has grown to a point where we've got so many lots, so many clients now that people need to be specific in their roles. But yeah, everyone has a job to do, and thank God the last couple of years has been enormously successful for, I think, the whole industry actually, not just us, but
Yeah,
definitely us.
So obviously you guys are providing an amazing service to both vendors and the purchasers, but who is paying you? How do you guys make your money for the work you do?
So both really. So you have any property that's bought in the auction, a buyer has to pay a buyer's fee to us, which is £1,000 plus VAT for anything that's bought. And then the seller, when they instruct us on the property, we agree a sale commission of usually a percentage of what the purchase price is.
In the same way they would with an estate agent.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
And then you have the entry fee as well for the payment to start for like the
The
catalogue.
client is the
Sure.
seller. Let's be absolutely clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
The seller is the client of Auction House London, but we have a duty of care to all our buyers as well, because A, we don't want them to have a bad experience, and B, as Jordan correctly says, they are also parting with a sum of money, much less than the seller is, to facilitate a purchase in our auction.
And so you touched on buyer's fees as well. So the buyers are paying to bid at the auction.
Not to
Not
bid.
to bid, to
Not
win
to
a
win.
property.
To win.
Only if they win.
Only if they win.
To register to bid, we put a hold on their card, just like if you're going to a hotel. You know, they don't actually take the money, but you can't go and spend.
Before
the
you
money.
smash up the minibar, and they know they can see in your face, they go, "This guy's going to tear up the minibar in this hotel." They quickly swipe your card to make sure
That's what we do. We're like, this guy's going to wind up property and run away. We
There's
swipe
going to
your
be
card here.
none of those mini whiskey bottles left by the time he's done. So that's all it is for us. It's just in case you win, we swipe just to stop you running off.
Sure. Yeah,
But
yeah.
there is, to be clear, it doesn't cost you anything to physically bid.
And moving on to final question. What happens on the day of a property auction? I've woken up. Well, actually, you've woken up.
11:15.
11:15. Auction
Missed
starts
the
at
auction.
11.
Yeah, that's awkward. Yeah. What happens to us, and what happens to the general people involved?
Let's go
What does
through
auction day look
auction
like?
house,
So-
seller, buyer.
So we
Is there a
we
difference?
always get into the office about 7:30 on auction day. It's an early start to make sure that all of the registered bidders are across the line, we like to say. So they, we have to accept everyone. So they upload their IDs, put in their card details, put in all their details, but they can't bid until we've gone.
We've got 800 signing up the
Exactly.
day before.
So it's a lot of pressure of making sure that all of those people are across the line and ready to bid on the day of the auction. And then also just going through reserves is a big thing that me and Andrew have to do the morning of the auction. A lot of my clients don't like to give me their reserve prices until the night before the auction, which drives me crazy. So usually me and Andrew are there together first thing, just double checking every single property, because if you mess up a reserve price, that is a massive
Mistake. That's a big one. That's a big one.
you don't want to be because
Luckily, that's never happened. But Auction
think
day is I think it happened once or
years ago.
twice, but only when information has been supplied incorrectly. We don't just guess reserves.
Yeah.
I don't just stand up there and go, what do I think the reserve should be on this house, and not actually consult the seller. But yeah, from our point of view, so I do 90% of the auctioneering. I've got since we got to a level where we have so many lots, I can't do 10 hours by myself. So we now have.
So what time does the auction day start?
9:45 is the very first lot under the hammer, and it goes on till about 8 p.m. at
8
night.
p.m. Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah,
it's crazy how long. When we were
back.
back in the room, we used to start at 12 o'clock, finish by 5 p.m.
Sure.
5 p.m. I don't know. We've got a lot more lots these days, so it's probably double the size of the catalogue now, anyway. But for some reason, it takes a lot longer.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
I'd say we have better lots as well these days, so there's more bidding wars. So
They
you
take
know,
longer.
you might be on one lot for 15
I guess you
minutes.
you can't time it
Exactly.
because you don't know how it's going to be perceived on the day because well you get an idea, but suddenly it might just.
Well, the other thing as well, Kartina, is that ultimately I can't see what's going on at home. So in the old days, there'd be two people going full blast in a bidding war. And I can tell just by looking at one of them, either they've got up and left the room, or they just say, no, I'm done, leave me alone, stop coming back to me. Now, there's just a screen. I'm staring exactly like this. I'm staring into a camera, and I'm shouting numbers,
So
401, 402, 403. Now, I don't know when one of them's just gone and left and just stood up and put their laptop down. So it takes longer. It takes longer, and there's a sense of, are you going to come back? Are you still there, Mr. A? Are you still involved in this? And it's a long, long, long day, and there's not much we can do to speed it up other than my voice trying to say the words as quick as I can. But a vendor doesn't want you to rush their lot. If you've given me your house to sell and your number, lot 103, you couldn't care less that this has already been going on for 6 hours. That's none of your concern. Your only worry that day is that the most expensive thing you own is going to be sold for the very best price possible, and that guy shouting the numbers out does a good job. You don't care how tired I am or how long I've already been doing it, and I'm very mindful of that. So we don't rush.
Yeah.
And it does frustrate people that it goes on till 8 p.m. And we're not stupid. It frustrates us. And there's buyers going, I've been here literally since midday. I didn't know what time the lot, and it's 8 p.m. And I didn't even win it.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you want us to do? Like, unfortunately, this is how it
The same
is now.
scenario might have happened in real life. They might have been there all day, but
Exactly.
Well, it's
there's an element
worse.
of.
They've had to drive in, park, pay for parking all day. Still don't know.
Probably
At
run
least-
back out to top it up.
Well, at least they can sit in their pants now and just like flip the laptop up every couple of minutes. I mean, and then put it down again when it's nowhere near their lot,
So, what happens? You kind of touched on whether. What happens if there's only one bidder that turns up to the whole day? Has it ever happened?
That's when I earn my money. That's when the legend of auctioneers comes in, because we have to. I've got to be careful how I say all this, but we have to ensure that the one bidder you're talking about pays at least the reserve price. Well, it can't pay more, but pays the reserve price. And I can adopt any skills and tactics I deem suitable and fit to ensure that happens. And my duty is to the seller, and it's written in our auction conditions, that I am allowed to do whatever it takes to get that buyer to pay reserve.
Sure.
Now, obviously, I'm not going to stand there and say, dear buyer, you're the only person bidding. Can I kindly ask that you pay our reserve price of 400? Because no sane buyer would go, yeah, sure, I'll do that, click.
Sounds good.
So I have to maybe create an illusion that buyer is bidding against lots of other people so that they feel good about themselves when they click down at 400 and magically win it at their price. And what tactics I use to do that is on me, but
You'll have
you
to
can
log
probably
in on
guess.
the 3rd of August and find
You
out.
can log in and guess, but let's be honest. There's a lot of acting and a lot of, how can I put this nicely? When people say, is it easy being an auctioneer? I say, yes, as long as there's competitive bidding.
Yeah.
Anyone can do that. You could do that. You could just go 1, 2, 3, 4. How do I get you to 5 when there's nobody bidding 1, 2, 3, and 4 is where the skills of a good auctioneer come in. Not only doing that, but not making it blooming obvious what I'm doing. Having an imaginary conversation with that chair over there is part of the act.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in.
No,
Is that easy to do now online, or was it easier when you were in person?
I enjoyed it in person, just from a purely egotistical point of view. There's nothing gave me more satisfaction than when a seller came up to me at the end of an auction and said, oh my God, you told me there was only one person for this. I was like, 4. I said, no, there was one.
Yeah.
The other three,
talking to the wall.
The other three was one light switch over there and a
Yeah.
couple of empty chairs over there. He said, "My God, that was so good. Like, I really thought you were." I said, "Yes, because I have to look at that chair and have a chat with them like I'm
Yeah.
talking to the guy in row 4.
So how do you do that now online?
So now I would simply say, because the physical person who's clicking away is not in front of me.
Yeah.
So they're just clicking, and I say thank you, and then I go, oh, thank you, and thank you, and thank you. And what I must be careful not to do is to get overexcited and a real rank amateur would be like, oh my God, he's done it. You know what I'm saying? And I've seen that. I've watched other auctioneers, and it's amazing. You're watching, can I have this? Can I have that? Oh my God, I've got it. This is unbelievable. And they're looking around at all their staff, high-fiving. And you can just tell we're all guys going, he's hit reserve now. Yeah,
Okay.
You can tell straight away.
Sure.
And the art it's an illusion. A lot of it is. And the buyer's not getting, let's be absolutely clear, the buyer's not losing here. They
Correct.
can't win it for less than that anyway.
Right, they're getting the best possible deal.
And you want them to feel good. You don't want to. You want them to feel like they're getting something. Wow, and I won it, and I'm a winner, and aren't I great? And so it's good for them.
Yep.
They're having a win as well.
Yeah. Well, any more questions, Sam?
Nothing from me.
I think we'll end it there. But thank you, guys. That's been really engaging. Really enjoyed that. Particularly enjoyed the story about the chap who is a well-known thief.
I
Identity
sincerely, the guy gets his laptop.
He's got a massive portfolio, that guy. He's
due
with
to-
other people's phones.
He's due to complete next week.
Well, if he
Well,
doesn't,
good luck
and he
to
needs
him.
a bridging loan,
Yeah,
know it's cool.
Tab. All about tab.
Honestly, no, thank you guys so much for
No
lending your
worries.
time.
No,
and
thank you for
Thanks
having
for
yeah.
having us. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam, for coming back
Oh, you're
in.
welcome.
And thanks to all our listeners for watching. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment within the first hour of LinkedIn, please. Thank you very much.
And
See you next
May
time.
I add, if you're looking to sell a property
yeah,
in
sorry.
auction, please call Auction House London on 0207 625 9007.
I will put all of their information in the show notes. See you next time. Bye.